Who replaces Spencer Strider in the fifth spot? Do the Braves go internally, or is it already time to look outside of the organization? I'll answer all of those questions and many more on today's Mailbag podcast of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at ShortstopBall. Follow the podcast there as well at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, or feedback that you have for the podcast, and maybe they'll be answered. Like on today's episode, our Mailbag episode, where I answer all of your questions. If you're new and watching on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Also hit the thumbs up button there as well so others can see the show and join us here at Locked On Braves. You're listening on the audio version. Thank you so much for your support as well. If you would leave me a 5-star review. And I want to thank all those out there who support us here at Locked On Braves, all my everydayers as well. This week I've seen Kill Manful from Chicago, Kristen Angelica, who unknowingly took a selfie of us together at the Braves game last Saturday. Also an everydayer on here, Joshua Britt, Wells 1, and Lion Man. Thank you so much for letting me know you're an everydayer. If you are an everydayer, you can let me know down in the comment section below on YouTube. Love hearing those comments or reading those comments from you. Today's Mailbag episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And we have a lot to get to in today's Mailbag episode. Pretty much 15 of the 20 questions that were asked all have to do with starting pitching, the rotation, the fifth spot, what the Braves are going to do there. So I have a lot of questions to answer regarding Spencer Strider and the rotation. First one comes from Steve Lamb, who says, assuming Strider misses the rest of the year, how do you think the Braves fill this spot in the rotation? I think for now, they're going to do it internally. I think they are going to mix some guys in, see if somebody can take hold of the job and hang on to it. I think that would be the hope, is that whether that be a Winans, a Vines, a Elder, AJ Smith-Shawver, maybe a Hurston Waldrop a little later on, I think ideally one of those guys grabs the rotation spot, holds on to it, and is able to fill it in for the rest of the year or for whatever time Strider is out. As I'm recording this 10 a.m. Central on Friday morning, we have not gotten the Spencer Strider news, but assuming he's out the rest of the year, I think that would be ideal scenario for the Braves. We got plenty of other questions to get into that. Tyke D Music, sorry if I messed that name up, says, are we likely to look outside the organization for a starter this early with Strider likely being out for a while? No, I know there's other questions too about trade possibilities. I don't think they will look outside of the organization right now. If they did, it would likely be to get another back-end starter. And I think you'd rather see what you have with the back-end starters you already have in-house. I know things didn't go well with Winans, but Darius Vines had some moments last year. Bryce Elder was an all-star last year. AJ Smith-Shawver looked pretty good for the most part in his limited run last season. So nobody's going to be trading top starters at this point of the year. If they're going to do that, they might as well just wait till the trade deadline, where the prices are probably going to be just as high, if not higher, as teams get more desperate, getting closer to the postseason, and probably going to be more teams that lose frontline starters. So nobody's going to be willing to trade their top starters right now at the moment. If the Braves were to make a move, it would be to get another veteran fill in for the back of the rotation. And I feel like there's already those options internally that the Braves can lose. DAD says, you might end up spending a lot of time discussing Strider if they let us know Friday as planned. They haven't yet as I'm recording, but says, I'm curious if he does need surgery, does AA go out and look for a trade, or do you think he'll stick with the Braves minor league arms? Kind of already answered that. I think he'll stick with the minor league arms for now, give them a chance. And then if you get to the deadline and nothing's working out, maybe another injury has happened at that point, then I think you do really need to go out and try to find another at least mid-rotation type of starter. DAD also said, hey, Jake, just wanted you to know you and your family, or how you and your family are doing. I know it's been a tough time for you, and I wanted to send some love. Thank you so much for that. It is still very rough over here with my passing of my brother earlier this year. So I appreciate that and the thoughts there. Kaz Buckeye says, rank these four: Dodd, Elder, Winans, Vines. I'd put it Elder, Vines, Winans, and Dodd. That's how I would rank those four right now. Hagen861 says, the Winans experiment failed. Who's the least bad replacement? AJ Smith-Shawver hasn't been good. Neither has Elder. I think Elder's looked okay in his first two minor league starts, but I do think Elder is the next option. I know they've already called up Darius Vines after optioning Winans, so maybe Vines does get the next opportunity, but I have to believe at some point Elder's going to get a shot. And as I just ranked those guys a minute ago, I do think Elder is the least bad replacement, as Hagen put it. Ron Chung says, when do you think that Hurston Waldrop will make his major league debut? I think it'll be mid-season. I think June, July at the earliest for Hurston Waldrop. I mean, I get he's a college pitcher, so he can move a little bit quicker along. His first start, he gave up 11 hits this year at Double-A. So I think it's going to be later in the summer before we see Waldrop. They're going to want to let him continue to work on some things before giving him that big league debut. But I do think we see him at some point this year. Bellfire says, it seems logical to have Elder take Strider's place in the rotation if he is truly out for the season as expected. Who do you think is that next man up, given another injury, or to fill for a spot start? So if it's not Elder, I do think it's Vines, who they have called up right now. If they can get AJ Smith-Shawver, stretched out a little bit more, kind of their plan early on, it looked like, was to limit his innings. He was only supposed to go two innings in his first start, but both of his first two outings so far have not been very good. So I think they're going to obviously let him work on some things, being a young kid, even though he does already have big league experience. I think that's who they would want to call up. But if you're asking me right now, if another injury happened in the rotation, and let's hope that isn't the case, I think it would be Elder and Vines would be your top two guys who would fill in there. Leland Hurt says, hey, Jay, given the horrendous outing by Winans, y'all are being way too hard on Winans. Defense did not help him very much. But he says, do you think, one, he's ready for the bigs? Yes. I mean, he's ready as a fifth starter, a spot starter. Two, do they bring up Elder to give him a chance? I would think so. We'll talk about more about that a little bit later on, but Elder is going to get his opportunity here at some point. Three, who else is in our system? Kind of talked about that already. Darius Vines, Dylan Dodd, AJ Smith-Shawver, Hurston Waldrop would kind of be those top candidates. Four, go after someone outside the organization. Not right now, more likely towards the trade deadline. And then five, legitimately pursue Max. If they do pursue Max Fried, I got to think it's after the season. If you make that extension now, it goes towards your luxury tax payroll for 2024. And basically anything that they do with Max would put them over that third threshold for 2024. So I'm not saying they're out on Max. I think there's a chance with the environment that maybe they get Max on a shorter term, high AAV deal, but I think it would happen after the season. Storm Lover says, how long before Elder is called up? That is the question right now, and I gotta think it's sooner than later. We'll see what happens here with Darius Vines and him getting called up, if he actually makes this start on Tuesday, or if they just rest up Elder until then. That'd be a long time between starts for Elder. But again, we'll discuss that a little further on in the podcast. Still got a lot more questions to get to regarding the starting rotation, trades, and all of that. We'll get to that here next. Do you love getting money back on the things you buy? Of course you do. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibotta user earns $145 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Other apps give you points that don't amount to much. With Ibotta, just add your offers in the app, upload your receipt, and you get real cash that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. Join the over 50 million savers and earn cash back every time you shop from over 2,700 brands and retailers, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora, Best Buy, and more. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONMLB. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Got it in the background and you're constantly having to turn it down because of all the screaming? Then make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On Monday, we'll recap the Marlins series and catch you up on everything happening at the minor league level. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to Locked On Braves. Let's jump back into the questions here. We got plenty more talking about the rotation, the state of the rotation. Jackson Baswell says, I've been saying this for the longest time. We have no pitching depth. I know we have Waldrop and AJ Smith-Shawver, but they are not going to be ready this year. It is mandatory we get a starter at the deadline. In that case, who do we need to get? I don't know that I agree with that take, that it is absolutely necessary that the Braves get a starter at the deadline. You can win a World Series with Max Fried, Chris Sale, and Charlie Morton. I truly believe that. Look at what the Braves won the World Series with in 2021. The Braves can win a World Series with those three guys, even if Ronaldo Lopez has to be your fourth starter, because you have an offense that's one of the best in baseball, and they just didn't produce last year. You're going to have to lean heavily on your offense and your bullpen. But I think the Braves can win a World Series with what they still have in the rotation, minus Strider. Would I love for them to go out and get another mid to top of the rotation arm? Certainly. And if that becomes available and makes sense, I would love to do it. But I don't think it's necessary. And I'm sure a lot of you probably disagree with that. But I think if you have a healthy Max Fried, you have a healthy Chris Sale, you have a healthy Charlie Morton who stops walking batters, the rotation is good enough. I think the bullpen is good enough. I know everybody's living in the moment after what just happened in that Mets series where the pitching wasn't very good, but I still believe that they can get it done. It really comes down to the offense, though, and can they continue to produce and put up big runs in the postseason like they do over the course of the regular season? All that said, I think they'll, again, look at opportunities and who's available at the deadline that could potentially be a fit for this team. Slugger R13, what trade deadline targets do you see AA pursuing to replace Strider? Obviously, there's a serious need for high-end pitching for the postseason and in 2025 if Fried walks. Are there any targets that have at least 2 more controllable years? Ted asked a similar question. Braves are going to need to get at least 1 starter for next season. Fried and Morton will be gone probably half of next season too. Why not try to get someone now? If now, who gets traded, or is it just not possible now? I mean, if you're talking like now, it's not possible. No teams, as I said earlier, no teams are going to be willing to give up that type of player at this moment. Certainly could happen at the deadline. And I agree with the take that if they do feel the need to go out and make a big trade at the deadline, I'd look for somebody who maybe has another year of control that could pitch in 2025 as well, because you're going to need help in the rotation past this season. So again, I haven't really looked at trade targets. I think it's probably a little bit too early to look at trade targets and know who will be available. But I do agree with the take that if you're going to, it needs to, or it doesn't need to be, but it would be nice to be somebody who has control both for this year and next year. And so that's kind of what I would be looking at as well. Just some names, just quickly searching, Martin Perez of the Pirates. I don't think that gets anybody excited. There's just not anybody right now that we know to be available that's really going to move the needle. Paul Blackburn of the A's. The Marlins might have some names to move, but you don't typically see in-division moves like that. The Red Sox fell out. Maybe Nick Pivetta, who he may be out for the year as well. It sounds like his is serious and he could be back. Just not a lot of exciting names right now that we can even speculate would be available at the trade deadline. But I do like the idea of getting somebody that's not just available for 2024, but somebody available for 2025 as well to help kind of fill some of that depth if you do lose a Fried and a Morton and Strider's out for half the season. Cavs Buckeyes, I once assumed Lopez would be in the October bullpen, no matter what. Is there a scenario where he's the third starter in the playoffs, even if everyone is healthy? I think it would be between him and Morton. I think, Chris Sale, we're assuming everybody is healthy. Obviously, Freed's going to be in there. I think Chris Sale is going to be in there. Gives you two lefties as your guaranteed guys in the rotation. And so I think it comes down to him and Morton. And look, if the command with Morton continues like it did in his last start and like it has, honestly, the previous two seasons, I may feel more comfortable with a Ronaldo Lopez going out there, maybe giving you 4 or 5 innings, going through the lineup a couple of times. I may feel more comfortable with that, but it's a long way to go before we get there. But I think there is a world in which Lopez overtakes Morton as that number 3 starter behind Max Fried and Chris Sale. I think that is certainly a possibility. The question with that is, how long can you push him? As he's been a reliever, hasn't been a starter for quite some time. How many innings can you push him? How many innings can you push Chris Sale? So is there a point during the season where maybe you have to skip him, or maybe you do move him back to the bullpen for a little bit and give some other guys some starts? How are they going to manage that? I think is a huge question, but I don't think it's out. I don't think it's crazy to think that Lopez could overtake Morton this year if the command does continue to be as bad as it was this past week. I can't say this next name, but he asked a question, or she says, small sample size, but to go back, would you rather Lopez or Glasnow with their current contracts? So just to remind you, Glasnow was traded from the Rays to the Dodgers and then immediately signed a 5-year, $136 million extension, while Ronaldo Lopez signed a 3-year, $30 million extension with the Braves. What you also have to keep in mind here is that the Dodgers gave up 4 prospects in that deal. So not only did they have to pay up $136 million, they also gave up 4 prospects. So it's very early on in the Ronaldo Lopez era with the Braves. The results have been really good. I'm somewhat skeptical that those can continue. I don't think he's going to be bad by any means, but so far he's pitched like a 1 or 2 starter. I think he's more going to be a number 3 or 4 going forward. It's just with pitcher injuries in the way they are, and Glasnow, somebody that doesn't have a track record of throwing a lot of innings, I think it's very dangerous to give any pitcher more than 3 years. So, again, maybe I'm a little biased here. I mean, Glasnow is obviously better. If I could guarantee his health, I would rather take Glasnow, even if it meant giving up 4 of your top prospects, even if it meant giving him a 5-year, $136 million or $136.5 million deal. But Lopez for 3 years, $30 million, if he pitches like a 3 or a 4, I mean, that's a pretty solid move as well. So, I mean, I think on the whole, the Lopez deal is safer and makes more sense. But Glasnow is the better pitcher. I mean, I would rather have Tyler Glasnow than Ronaldo Lopez. So, again, you're having to account for the fact that you have to give up 4 prospects and give a starting pitcher who already comes with a lot of injury risk that big of a deal. I think I'd probably take Lopez, but Glasnow is the better pitcher. Randy says, if given the opportunity from the Mets, would you rather have Lindor on a deal with him eating some of the salary, or Luis Angel Acuna to plug in at shortstop, and it's either a real possibility? I would say neither are a real possibility, especially not Acuna. I think he's part of the Mets' future. And you're not really going to see too many huge deals between the Braves and the Mets. I mean, the Mets want to compete pretty soon. They may compete this year after what we just saw in that series. So I don't think either is a real possibility. I think Lindor would be more of the possibility. I think the Mets could get out from under that contract. Not that I think Lindor is going to be terrible, but I do think, he's getting older. We've obviously seen some decline. It's a pretty big contract. I shouldn't see some decline. He was a 30 play last year, I believe. But I do think, given the Mets time frame of when they really hope to start competing, being contenders for the division and World Series, I think they would take the opportunity to get out from that Lindor contract if they could. I still think he's going to be a good player. I would take him on the Braves, certainly, but neither one's a real possibility. Tim Bell, do the Braves have a problem versus left-handed starters? And it's a good question, because the Braves have pretty much dominated lefties the last couple of years with this lineup, and a lineup that really only has 2 true lefties, or now 3 with Kelenic, in Kelenic, Harris, and Olsen. they've dominated lefties in the past. It's an early sample size early on, 128 at bats versus lefties, but they're 20th in baseball in OPS against left-handers this year. And, Garrett Crochet notwithstanding, it hasn't necessarily been dominant lefty starters that they've been facing. Quintana should have been somebody that they absolutely rocked, and they just couldn't for 4 innings there before they finally started to get to him. It's too early to say, and it's not enough of a sample size to really make a determination, but at least to begin the year, they have struggled with lefties, both hard-throwing lefties and soft-tossing lefties. Cavs Buckeyes, Acuna showed some signs of return to form on Thursday, had a hard-line drive snagged by Beatty and a fly ball over 100 miles per hour that he just got under. Still isn't barreling anything up, and the whiffing at meatballs he's used to crushing. How long would it take like this for you to be worried? I mean, that's a tough one as well, because we've seen what Ronald is capable of when he's healthy. Last year, he's the greatest player on the planet. It would take a long time for me to really be worried about Ronald. I talked about him on Tuesday's podcast, on Taco Tuesday segment, what's going on with Ronald. I do believe it's just a timing issue, but you're right. I mean, Quintana was throwing 90, 91, 92. Some of those were well located, but some of them were over the middle of the plate, and he's just swinging through them or just barely fouling them off. I do believe it's a timing issue, and he'll get it corrected. He's just missing the fastballs right now, and that is somewhat concerning just for the moment. I don't think it's concerning long term. Again, as I said on Tuesday when I had this discussion, the only thing that would really concern me if he is really still bothered by that knee. Because we saw what happened in 2022 when he came back and he didn't fully trust that knee. We saw pretty much what we're seeing right now. We're seeing him just a tick late. We're not seeing, the hard hits that we're accustomed to, and we're basically seeing him be an average Major League Baseball player. And we know that's not Ronald. We know he's the best player in the game when he is on, when he is healthy. So that's the only thing that would really concern me, is that if that knee is still really giving him trouble and he's not able to trust it the way that he did last year. There's nothing really to indicate that. Again, I think it's more of a timing issue, but I say you get into late May, June at the latest, and the timing is still off. Then I would start to maybe be a little bit more worried about Ronald. Final question here from Peterson. He says, do you see d'Arnaud becoming the Braves manager one day? Not sure how many more years Snit plans to stay, but from what I've seen, everyone thinks TD will be a manager after he's done playing. I certainly can see that happening. I definitely think once Travis d'Arnaud is done here, look, I think the Braves, if he's healthy in the year, I think the Braves bring him back next season. But I can see Travis d'Arnaud staying in the Braves organization, becoming a manager one day. He's a great clubhouse guy and seems very intelligent, obviously, as most catchers are, and most catchers make pretty good managers. So, again, not sure of the timing, but I do think that could happen one day. All right, next we'll get into setting up the Marlins series, where the Braves are really looking to bounce back after a series loss at home to the Mets. We'll discuss all of that here next. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. They have the Braves at minus 190 against the Marlins on Friday night. I don't know what that means, but I believe that means the Braves are pretty heavy favorites. They still have the second best odds to win the World Series on FanDuel, and they are still heavy favorites to win the NL East. Now, the season-long awards, Braves have fallen off there. Obviously, with Spencer Strider getting hurt, Zach Wheeler is now the NL Cy Young favorite. And with Ronald's slow start and Mookie's hot start, they now have Mookie as the NL MVP favorite in the betting odds over on FanDuel. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. Also, please take this seriously after what has happened with the Shohei Ohtani's interpreter situation. If you have any issues betting, gambling, visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Are you struggling to close deals? B2B selling is tougher than ever, and that's why I want to tell you about LinkedIn Sales Navigator. LinkedIn's Sales Navigator is a sales intelligence platform that helps professionals effectively prospect and engage high-value customers, drive higher revenue, and increase sales performance. Sales Navigator helps you target the right buyers, surface key signals such as job changes or which accounts you should prioritize, and shows you hidden allies so you can find those buyers that are most likely to convert. Fueled by LinkedIn's 1 billion member platform, Sales Navigator gives you the most up-to-date first-party data, enabling you to unlock conversations with the people that matter. Right now, you can try LinkedIn Sales Navigator and get a 60-day free trial at linkedin.com/lockedon. That is linkedin.com/lockedon for a 60-day free trial. Let LinkedIn Sales Navigator help you sell like a superstar today. Just go to linkedin.com/lockedon and get started. All right, let's turn our attention to the weekend, where hopefully the Braves are going to take advantage of a Marlins team that is really down right now to start the year. It is so bad that manager Skip Schumacher has already asked to have his option for next year taken off the table. I mean, they got a manager that already wants to be out of there, a team that has really just struggled, a front office that didn't go out and do anything really to improve a team that made the postseason last year. So hopefully this is a chance for the Braves to get back on the right track. They got the pitchers to do it. I mean, it's your top three starters going in this series. It's Fried versus Trevor Rogers on Friday, Chris Sale versus Max Meyer on Saturday, and Charlie Morton versus Jesus Luzardo on Sunday. So this is a really good chance for the Braves to go in there and at least win a series. But honestly, they should go in there and get a sweep against this Marlins team with the way they're playing and with the starters that they have lined up. So that's what I'm looking for. Jesus Luzardo, he's gotten off to a rough start, but we just talked about the Braves' struggles against lefties. So that could be a matchup of these three that really worries me the most for this Braves team. Max Meyer, really good young arm, and he's gotten off to a pretty good start, but hopefully somebody that the Braves can get to in this series. And really looking forward to a Max Fried start on Friday. I know we had a lot of discussion on Thursday's podcast with Ryan of Locked On Mets, and he was questioning why the Braves would push Max Fried back instead of go for that series win against the Mets. Hopefully that plan pays off and Fried gets his first quality start of the year on Friday night. Looking into some of the news, we kind of already touched on it. The Braves optioned Alan Winans after the game on Thursday, recalled Darius Vines. Braves don't need that fifth starter until Tuesday, a game at Houston against the Astros. There's a chance that Darius Vines could start that game. Vines could also be there if the Braves need a long reliever in these next 4 games coming up. And if that happens, then perhaps the Braves bring up somebody else. I don't know why you don't just go ahead and bring up Bryce Elder. I mean, I get wanting to have that insurance of somebody that can give you the length, but I don't know. I feel like Elder's the guy. This either to me means the Braves just don't trust Elder as much anymore. I don't know what else it can mean. Again, you have a Jesse Chavez that can come in there and give you bulk innings if needed. I don't know that there's a need to bring up a Darius Vines to have somebody else, in case of a short start or something like that. And if Elder starts at any point over this weekend in Gwinnett, he wouldn't be available to pitch on Tuesday anyway. So that's something to watch. Vines was supposed to pitch in Gwinnett on Friday. We'll see if they replace him with Elder. Are the Braves going to hold Elder out for 4 more days until they need him on Tuesday? And then he's going to be on a ton of rest because he hasn't pitched since last Saturday as is. I don't really know that I agree with the plan and the decision-making that they're making here to just swap guys in and out. I feel like Elder's proven himself before. Just give him the spot and see if he can run with it. Now, I get why they couldn't do it this past weekend, because if they had played on Wednesday, it would have been short rest for Elder. And because they optioned him after spring training, you had to wait 15 days to call him up anyway. So I get why you couldn't do it for this past start, but I don't understand why Elder is not coming up for this next one. So we'll see how things play out with the rotation going forward, but I have to believe at some point Elder is going to get called up to get an extended look in the rotation. Other news from around the league, I kind of touched on it. Ohtani's interpreter, Ipe, is not looking good right now, and it's been reported that he stole $16 million from Ohtani. Obviously, court of public opinion is going to think that there's something fishy going on here, but all reports are saying that it was all him. He stole that money. Ohtani had no knowledge of it. Look, it's hard for me to sit here and believe that a man lost $16 million out of his account and had no idea. I get some people are so rich that they just don't keep up with their finances and might have no idea. And Ohtani apparently really trusted this guy. That's hard for me to believe. But again, the facts say that Ohtani had no knowledge of this, and it was all Ippy stealing this money from him. So it looks like that investigation is just over like that. It seems like Ohtani's been exonerated from anything, and that Ippy is really going to get hit pretty hard with all that he's done and all the money that he stole. But again, we'll see how the rest of that plays out. That will do it for this episode. I want to remind you again that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and it's now available on the Amazon Fire TV or in Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Again, next week on Monday, we'll recap the Marlins series from over the weekend, and I'll get you caught up on everything happening down on the farm. First full week for all minor league teams, so we'll have a lot more to discuss there. Make sure you follow us on social media at shortstopball, at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Hit that thumbs up button as well. And make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the Locked On Braves podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.